has shared with you his proven system of sales success. As he said, it's simple and it's hard. In this final segment, now that Tom has taught you the specifics of his sales system and gotten into how to be successful in the areas of goal setting, planning your presentation, and seeing more prospects and better prospects, he discusses the critical roles that ethics and honesty play in your careers and in your life. You can use every technique that Tom has given you, but until you learn to be honest with yourself, your company, and your prospects, ultimately, no amount of sales techniques will help. Tom tells us that somehow our value system has come to this, that if we know about something dishonest that's going on, as long as we don't participate, then somehow that's okay. Well, it isn't, and Tom explains why. Finally, Tom discusses what he calls the American sandbox, in which we all live, work, and play. As disillusioned as we of Americans have become with the state of our country and its core values, the American system still works, and the Boxcar millionaire himself is proof of that.
My selling system is not successful without the role of ethics. Ethics is a big word. We could discuss its role in sales and in your life for hours, days, or weeks. But for now, I want to share with you a little about ethics' key role in the world of professional selling. There are certain rules of fair play in selling. Most of these rules can be summed up in a single word: honesty. There are endless chances in selling to be dishonest. Sometimes you'll never get caught. But for most of us, the stress and tension of living with a lie is just as bad as getting caught. Teddy Roosevelt once said, "Character in the long run is the decisive factor in the life of an individual and of nations alike." The first place you must practice honesty is with yourself. Polonius, in Shakespeare's Hamlet, says, "This above all, to thy own self be true, and it must follow as night to day. Thou canst not then be false to any man." Most of the time, if we look in our heart of hearts, we know what to do. The real hope of improvement and happiness lie in the acceptance of who we are, both strengths and weaknesses alike. Then striving to improve on the weaknesses and make the strengths go stronger. Honesty to ourselves is the key to honesty with others. One Saturday afternoon, a preacher was preparing his sermon in his study. His 4-year-old son kept bothering him, and so to keep him busy, he tore a page out of a magazine with a map of the world on it. He tore the map into little pieces to make a puzzle for his son. He gave the pieces to the boy, thinking that would keep his son busy for hours. Instead, a few minutes later, the boy returned with the map in perfect order. The preacher asked his son, "How did you put it together so quickly?" The boy answered, "When you ripped out the page from the magazine, Daddy, I noticed a man on the back side of the map. I knew if I put the man together right, the world would be right." Truer words were never spoken. Here's a poem that I think sums up this idea of honesty to oneself. It's called "The Man in the Glass." When you get what you want in the struggle for self, and the world makes you king for a day, just go to the mirror and look at yourself and see what that man has to say. For it isn't your father or mother or wife whose judgment upon you must pass, but the person whose verdict counts most in your life is the one staring back from the glass. Some people may think you're a straight shooting chum and call you a wonderful guy, but the man in the glass says you're only a bum if you can't look him straight in the eye. He's the fellow to please. Never mind all the rest, for he's with you clear up to the end. And you've passed your most dangerous, difficult test if the man in the glass is your friend. You may fool the whole world down the pathway of life and get pats on the back as you pass, but your final reward will be heartaches and tears if you've cheated the man in the glass. The second obligation we have is to be honest with our prospects. It's always better to tell the truth than try to remember a lie. Intuitively, a high percentage of prospects can detect when they're being misled. There are a few basic guidelines to abide by when dealing with prospects and customers. Here are some. Don't overstate the benefits of your product. Don't purposely leave details out that will hurt your prospect. Don't accept money under false pretenses. Don't offer money under false pretenses. Benjamin Franklin said, "Honesty is the best policy. A person who isn't honest just doesn't have the sense God gave a goose." In the long run, good guys do win. I learned early in my career to be honest with my prospects. Once when I was selling books, I used the name of a person who I had talked to but who hadn't bought from me. The prospect confronted me and I lost the sale. And all the other sales that were in that prospect's sphere of influence as I worked through the neighborhood. In the banking world, I saw the same kind of thing. No long-term success will ever come from anything but honesty. When a bank prospect called one of my current customers, the best thing those current customers could say was, "You can count on them, me, or the company," they were all the same, "to do what he says." In my opinion, there can be no better recommendation. There is no salesperson who can call himself a salesperson who can't look a customer in the eye and feel good about the transaction. In one company I'm chairman of, we fix ATMs. We often buy used ATMs, and one used ATM we discovered $80,000 inside. It clearly didn't belong to us. But we said finders keepers. No, not really. We spent $5,000 in legal fees trying to figure out whose money it was. And when we did, we sent all $80,000 back. Too many salespeople and companies I know would have abided by the finders keepers mentality. Bottom line, it just wasn't our money. As salespeople, this is the attitude we must have. Look for a fair deal for the prospect in addition to a fair deal for you and your company. The third place where honesty must be present is with your company. Your company's like a ship. All the employees are on board. Well, I learned this early on. You can't sink half a ship. If the crew half goes down, the officers half goes down. Ultimately, everyone benefits or doesn't benefit together. What does this mean to you? It means that you should never lie or stretch your numbers on a sales activity report. Either you made the calls or you didn't. Either way, just be a man or a woman about it and face up to your performance. Never fudge an expense report. Oh, sure, you can pick up an extra $100 or so a week by doing it, but the risk isn't worth it, and the poison it puts in your own system is definitely not worth it. Remember, whatever you put in the lives of others comes back into your own. Over the years, I've worked with lots of fighter pilot salespeople. They might as well have starred in Top Gun. They were only out for themselves. The attitude of these salespeople was this: why should I do anything to help the company if I don't get paid for it? Well, perhaps that's not technically dishonest, but it's as close as you can get. If there's a hole in the boat and you don't plug it when you can, then that's worse than dishonest. That's just plain dumb. If you cash a man's check, then you support what he does. And when you can't support it, it's time to get another job. You know, I've actually had salespeople working for one of my companies try to recruit other salespeople in our company to go to a competitor with them when they decided to leave, and they did it while they were still working on my payroll. As the Redneck comedian Jeff Foxworthy says, that ain't right. It's a truth that so many people are interested in getting all that's coming to them and in not giving more than they get. People who just do the job don't get promoted. People who overflow their job get more money and more responsibility. So when it comes to sales ethics, honesty just about sums it up. But here's another thought. Whether it's honesty or something else, you can't buy business. The long-term and profitable kind that we all want, you can't buy it with anything but good service and good products. Bribes, sexual favors, and inappropriate gifts are all short-term quick fixes to long-term problems, and they flat don't work. Does your company have a code of ethics? If it doesn't, I suggest you write one for them. Go online and find one that you like, and then you can adapt it to your company. Every company should have a written code of ethics. Another question for you, if you do work for a business that has a code, does your company give only a single training session or more than one on this code of ethics? Is it even discussed at all? If not, suggest they start. Remember what words come to mind when most people think of a salesperson. Pushy, high pressure, con man, charlatan, cheat, dishonest, crooked, twist your arm, make you buy. Each one of us as salespeople must do our part to change this image. I've heard that an ethical salesperson is an oxymoron. Well, let's start changing that formally. Here's the Rotary International Code of Ethics. They call it the four-way test. It's short, simplistic, straight shooting, and it's a good place to start if you want to write your own. Of the things we think, say, or do, is it the truth? Is it fair to all concerned? Will it build goodwill and better friendships? Will it be beneficial to all concerned? Now, you can teach a code of ethics to salespeople. You can give them a test, and in an artificial atmosphere, almost everyone will get all the expected answers right. You can even improve behavior and acceptance of an ethical standard with punitive measures. You can even reward ethical behavior. However, the best way to be ethical is to live by your own personal code of ethics. Every study, every book, or every great sales manager I've known says this is accomplished best by a meaningful religious conviction. Now, I'm not here to preach. My goal is to give helpful advice and formulas for success. Over and over again, I'm confronted with the fact that we as human beings don't have enough emotional willpower to overcome the obstacles of life without this connection to a higher power. If I didn't believe that, I'd hate to compete against the man or woman who did believe it. I believe with all my heart that this meaningful religious conviction is a connection to unlimited power far beyond what any of us have in our own little battery packs. When you involve a personal code of ethics with a relationship to a higher power, you can be more than successful in your career. Your career can actually lift you up and give you purpose. Selling can become a calling that lifts you up. Man is not made in a crisis. He's revealed in the crisis. If you're going to stand up in the storm, you ought to know where you're anchored. One final question for you on ethics. What do you do if the company you work for is not ethical, according to your personal standards? If they're breaking the law, you should call the district attorney, the police, or your own attorney. The point is to report them. No matter what your current economic situation, it will only get worse by working for a company that is breaking the law. You must make your own decision in the long run. A company that endorses dishonesty at any level will ultimately fail. When it fails, you shouldn't be working there. When I interview salespeople and they tell me they left their previous company because it was unethical, I can't remember one of those salespeople who ever did anything about it. When I ask them, so what'd you do about it? The response is, I quit. Well, that's all well and good, but I think more is required than just leaving. Let's get on the record somewhere. The CEO, the authorities, the other salespeople. Tell someone that you can't work in a company that is dishonest. Somehow our value system has become this. If I know about something dishonest that's going on, but I don't participate in it, this gives me a free pass. Well, I say horse hockey to that. There was a fraternity at Duke University that dropped a pledge off in the country with no clothes. Only a very realistic blue demon mascot costume. Having nothing else to wear, the pledge put on the Blue Devil costume and started walking back to the university. Well, it started raining, and in an attempt to avoid getting in trouble with his fraternity by ruining the costume, the pledge decided to look for shelter. And the first thing he saw was a little country church. Well, inside the church, the preacher really had the congregation worked up. He was stomping and yelling, and the congregation was giving him an amen after every sentence. Now, the pledge thought he would just slip into the waiting area of the church until it stopped raining. But when he opened the door, he was standing right behind the preacher. As you can imagine, this caused quite a stir. People started jumping up and trying to get out the windows and out the back door, and one rather large woman decided to go out the door where the Blue Devil had entered. Well, the Blue Devil had the same idea at the same time, and the two of them got stuck in the doorway. Very quickly, the woman said, between you and me, Mr. Devil, I've been on your side all along. Well, situation ethics are no ethics at all. In scouting, I was always told integrity is what you do when there's no one there to watch or tell you what to do. You see, I don't believe you get a free pass if you know the company's doing something wrong and you just leave. If my neighbor was being robbed, I wouldn't pull down the shades. If another neighbor was beating his wife, I wouldn't just turn up the volume on the TV. And if my coworkers, my customers, or my friends were not being treated ethically, I'd try to solve it the best way I could within my means. When I graduated from high school, my Aunt Pauline gave me a poem I carried in my wallet and read every day in college. And it now hangs in my bathroom at home. It's called If by Rudyard Kipling. And it's my personal code of ethics. It goes like this. If you can keep your head when all about you are losing theirs and blaming it on you, if you can trust yourself when all men doubt you, but make allowance for their doubting too, if you can wait and not be tired of waiting, or being lied about, don't deal in lies, or being hated, don't give away to hating, and yet don't look too good nor talk too wise, if you can dream and not make dreams your master, if you can think and not make thoughts your aim, if you can meet with triumph and disaster and treat those two impostors just the same, if you can bear to see the truth you've spoken, twisted by knaves to make a trap for fools, or watch the things you gave your life to broken, and stoop and build them up with worn-out tools, if you can make one heap of all your winnings and risk it on a turn of pitch and toss, and lose and start again at your beginnings, and never breathe a word about your loss, if you can force your heart and nerve and sinew to serve your turn long after they are gone, and thus hold on when there is nothing in you, except the will which says to them, hold on, if you can talk with crowds and keep your virtue, or walk with kings nor lose the common touch, if neither foes nor loving friends can hurt you, if all men count with you, but none too much, If you can fill the unforgiving minute with 60 seconds worth of distance run, yours is the earth and everything that's in it. And which is more, you'll be a man, my son. This final discussion is about what I call the sandbox, which allows all of us to operate as salespeople, the American system. By the American system, I'm referring to the free enterprise system of fair competition and the governmental and legal system that guarantees our individual inalienable rights. Can you imagine selling in North Korea where none of these elements of our sandbox exists? I gave a speech at my alma mater, and the subject they gave me to talk on was what I feared as a baby boomer. Personally, it isn't the failure of the Social Security system. It isn't a fear of Medicare failure. It isn't a fear of nuclear war or even terrorists. My fear is that we aren't passing along the system, the values of the sandbox. I coached a high school debate team for 8 years as a volunteer, and one day one of the kids asked me, "How do you feel about America?" My response, in keeping with my style with anyone I'm trying to teach, was, "Well, Mike, how do you feel about America?" Mike said he didn't know. He didn't feel that he loved America, and he didn't know why people said they did. So I explained that America is a place where there's unlimited opportunity, that our system isn't perfect, but our system is the best in the world for maximizing human potential. I also said that America is the only hope for the rest of the free world. I told Mike that sometimes individuals can make us doubt our system, but those individuals are so rare they prove the rule. I told him that it's okay to be patriotic, that citizenship is a gift our forefathers gave us, and that lots of men and women died to preserve our freedoms. I also explained there was nothing wrong with the word patriotism, and that it was an obligation of citizenship. I told him that the promise of America is the pursuit of happiness and self-actualization. The American system allows you to get paid what you are worth, not what some group says an individual deserves or votes for instead of earns. Right now, we find ourselves frustrated as Americans. I've been frustrated 3 times in my life as an American: the Vietnam War, President Nixon, and now the war in Iraq. Well, we as Americans like straightforward. We like to win. We like to know who the enemy is. We also like to keep score and always know the score. But it seems now we're on the defensive. We're reacting. We can't get the ball. The better team doesn't seem to be winning. Just like the 3 times in history during my life, events can go against the things we like as Americans, and so we become frustrated. However, the system is still working. Individual achievement, economically and personally, grows higher every year with very few dips. More people have jobs and are making more money than ever before. It's like the scientist who trained the flea to jump out of the jar. He told the flea to jump, and out the flea jumped. He then took off one of the flea's pairs of legs and told the flea to jump. The flea was still able to jump out of the jar. He then removed a second pair of legs and said jump, and the flea made it out of the jar again. When he removed the final set of legs from the flea and said jump, the flea couldn't jump at all. And here's what the scientist's conclusion was. When you remove the legs of a flea, it becomes deaf. It's the wrong conclusion. And just because we're frustrated or uneducated doesn't mean the system isn't working. Let's not draw the wrong conclusion. It's our job as salespeople to make sure this sandbox of ours gets passed on for future generations. We should be selling America every chance we get. We shouldn't let people believe it's their right to vote themselves benefits from the public coffers, or that a good congressman is one who gets the most benefits for his district, or even that a tax refund is a government benefit. It was our money to start with. Believe me, I am not preaching politics here, just principles that allow salespeople to make as much money as they can and to rise up as high economically as they can. Each of us has a little piece of America to protect. Truth is not self-evident. It must be told and revealed. Truth crushed to earth doesn't rise again. You can make a child just as good a socialist or communist with instruction as you can an American. There's nothing about being born in America that guarantees a value system that believes in and promotes free enterprise. It's part of our job as salespeople to sell that system. James Agee, a Pulitzer Prize-winning author, said this: "In every child born, under no matter what circumstances, and of no matter what parents, the potentiality of the human race is born again. And in him, too, once more, and of each of us, our terrific responsibility towards human life, toward the utmost ideals of goodness, of the horror of terror, and of God." I heard a poem as a student. Williams College bases their educational philosophy on this poem, and went something like this. Mark Hopkins sat on one end of a log, and a farm boy sat on the other. Mark Hopkins came as a pedagogue, but he taught as an older brother. I don't care what Mark Hopkins taught, if his Latin were small and his Greek were not. For the farm boy he thought he, through the lecture time and quiz, the kind of man I mean to be is the kind of man Mark Hopkins is. Now the farm boy in that poem was James Garfield, one of the Garfield kids who became President of the United States. As salespeople, we can't continue to assume that the next generation will support the sandbox in which we play. I think it was Longfellow who said, one man can awaken another, and two can awaken a third, and three can awaken a village, and a village can awaken a nation. In addition to everything else, let's do our part to ensure that we pass this system on too. Parents may struggle to pay for education, special training, camps, or tutors, but most will never spend a dime or a minute on basic American values. Let's strive to keep America a place where a kid can start in a boxcar and end up the CEO of 2 public companies and living in a mansion.